So let's just do it. That's fine. I'm fine.
Okay. It's
Are you cool with it?
I'm
Okay.
whatever you'd like.
Yeah.
I think it would be great if. Sorry.
Yeah.
Start again.
Let's get. Yeah. Okay.
Sounds good. So I just wanted to start off by thanking you for participating in the Year of China Oral History Project. It was really refreshing for me to hear your personal take on what it was like to grow up in China during the Cultural Revolution, because as someone who is Chinese and as someone who has lived in Asia for the majority of my life, and in Beijing for the past 5 years, I feel like it's a part of my own background that has been silenced because many of my relatives and other people who have undergone that process are not willing to talk about it. So I just wanted to ask you what it was like to grow up in China during the Cultural Revolution and what your early life was like before you came to the States.
First of all, I would like to thank you for having this interview. And to answer your question, I just start from, I was born in 1957. I was born in Beijing and grew up in Beijing. While I was 6 years old, my parents divorced. So at that time, the percentage of divorce was very low in China because the working unit and the governors and the government tried very hard to control people's divorce. So they do not, even people are not living, alone, not getting along well, they still do not permit people's divorce because back then anything you need a paper from the permission from the working unit or government to do whatever kind of thing. So the reason they do not want to have do not allow people to get divorced was because then they could make announcement to the Western society, say that China has a better society system. Everybody living really well. They get along. They're happy family. We are very happy with our own life, with the living style. So back then, I was 6 years old, and at school, and the children at school did not really understand why. They never encountered anything like that. So they thought I was the reason caused my parents' divorce. So I was a bad one. So at the end of school, every day I would run very fast because all the children want to beat me down. They think they want to punish me. And I did not understand. I went home, asked my father why that happened. My father could not tell me anything about. And at that time I was living alone because my mother remarried, my father married, and my stepmother actually did not accept me to live with them, so I had to live in the dormitory. So every night I went through a nightmare, just afraid of the silence, afraid of quietness, afraid of footsteps, on the hallway. It just was I had to put the whole thing against door to secure myself. So that's my evening, my nightlife. And then during the day, I had to go to school and I had to go through that humiliation and the fear. And then when was 1966 Cultural Revolution happening in China, that lasted 10 years until 1976. At that time, all the school, colleges, and universities were shut down. We had no school. That was the time I was supposed to go to the college and the university to study, but I could not go there because there was no university in the colleges. So all the intellectuals, professors, or teachers were sent to the countryside, to live with the farmer and to have their mind re-educated. And the Cultural Revolution was against any foreign literature or contemporary art. And the idea of a cultural revolution was the cultural revolution. People want to start back to the tradition, back to the very common way. And of course there was another reason behind it, the political reason, but apparently that was the phenomenon. So that's kind of a background I was growing up. Had my personal, very confusing and painful life, and the society in the turbulence, the no education going on. And at that time I was very good in science, and my teacher would like me, to develop that part of it. But both of my parents they are doctors. They would like me to study medicine. but kind of life I went through, also what's going on in society, I just did not. I just slowly developed my interest into the literature until one day I found a book of a collection of poems written by Alexander Pushkin, which is a Russian poet. Was abandoned. The book was abandoned in the hallway because at then anyone who owned a book like that would be a big trouble. So I read that collection poem just the first time. I feel like there is so much love, there's so much sunshine, there's nature, there's all beautiful thing inside that book, in those poems, so far away from daily life I've been living. So that's how did I start to be interested in the literature and start to become a poet.
Yeah, I was actually very interested to discover that in one of the interviews you mentioned that the first person who inspired you to write poetry, who opened your eyes to the beauty of poetry, was Alexander Pushkin. And then the second one was Charles Baudelaire.
Yes.
And then the third one was William Gates. And I was very interested to discover that your primary literary influences were all Western authors, because I think Chinese literature, like the Tang poetry, is something that's very ingrained in the culture and something that all children grow up knowing and reciting, and it's something that's very central to the culture. So my question is, first of all, why did you find something in these poets that was outside of sort of, like, in the Cultural Revolution, all of this material was banned. How did you get access to it? And did you read it like as a translation?
Yes, I was reading in the translation.
Okay.
But don't forget, at that time, we were born and grew up in China. And during the Cultural Revolution, we kind of cut off the connection between ourselves and our tradition, the classical poetry. Mm-hmm. And that's one reason. I mean, again, there's back then, no education, no teacher, no leading, and the people are older than us to educate us, to teach us how to follow the tradition. There was no such thing during the Cultural Revolution. Yeah. So that was one reason I did not not just myself, also for our generation, was really not focus on our own tradition and the classical poetry. Yeah. And also our big fantasy at then was try to read as many as we can, put it in our hands about the literature from the world, because we live in such a close society. Not just we don't have a good way to get information, also our brain, our mind, the way of our thinking were even controlled by the society, by the party. Yeah. So you can imagine that at then, to living in that kind of circumstance, how much we want to open ourselves to receive things from the world. So that's why that's one of the reasons we were trying our best to find the treasure and the literature from the world, to read that. Of course, at then most of the work we involved, touched, or could be reached is in translation. So that's why we just basically allow one thing. The reason why was we cut off the connection with our tradition because of Cultural Revolution, and the reason too is that we are just eager. We are so thirsty. We are so hungry for the fruits from the Western society, the literature from the West society. That's why. That's kind of reason. But now when I'm to live in the United States, to live in the foreign land, to really think about our culture again, I feel like I'm paying so much more attention about classical poetry, Tang Dynasty, Song Dynasty, all the treasure and the beautiful, writing. One of my new writings really still contain my contemporary thinking, consideration, and the expression and experience. To keep that to match the living society, but the writing skill, the more and the understanding of a poetry, I'm paying a lot more attention and tremendous attention about our classical poetry. I mean, I really absorbed and I really help myself in writing so much from the classical literature.
So between, you said that the Cultural Revolution ran from 1966 to 1976.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then you came to the United States in 1990.
That's correct.
What was your life like between that period? In one of the articles, it mentions that you're organizing writers and poets into support groups to support the Tiananmen demonstrations.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Sure. As I said, back to what we talked about earlier, and there was no university college.
Mm-hmm.
So when I graduated from high school, I went to a special like a training school. Had 2 years of training to. Don't forget, at then there was when people graduate, if most of the children or the student, they have to go to the countryside. Just like in this country, you have to serve the army, military, in a certain age. That's your duty. And back in China during the Cultural Revolution, that's also when you graduate, there's no other choice. You have to go to the countryside to have your life re-educated, okay, with the local people, with that kind of a lifestyle. So since my parents was divorced, I was with my father. They did not have a kid, so I was only kid for that family. Back then, there's several kind of people. They could have a exceptional, by not going to the countryside. One has to be a single person for the family. Your parents getting old, you just have one kid, you need to stay home to take care of your parents. So since I was in that situation, so I was very lucky I did not go to the countryside. But during the school, we still spend months, go to the army, go to the way. I did that. But I did not spend 3 years, 5 years of my life during the Cultural Revolution to go to the countryside. So I went to a special training college and then to have trained to make a libel. At that time, the factory or institute, they still need people to work for them. Mm-hmm. But the whole system is messed up. So there's no school can send the kids directly into those factory or institutes. So had to go to so that's why they created this kind of a special training school. That's another way to get for the factory to have the new member to work there. So I went there, had 2 years of training. Then I work in the Film Lighting Institute, which is to make the light bulb, to project film, to see, because when you in the cinema, when you project film, it's a very high beam, and the light bulb usually have very short life. So what we are doing research, try to extend light bulb hours. So I worked there for 5 or 6 years. So of course I did not like it. At that time I started my writing. Mm-hmm. So I just decided to try to. At then, this one thing about the China was, if you work in the factory, if you have some kind of illness, you could stay home. You still get a high percentage of your salary, like say 80%. Mm-hmm. But if you are ill, you stay home. Okay, that's called the social welfare. Yeah. That's one thing China was always proud of themselves. Say we really have a good treatment to our worker. Mm-hmm. So I would like to take advantage of that, So I find a way for my friend to learn something from my friend to fake kind of a illness, so I could get the permission from the, I get a written paper from a doctor and say, and this kid is really in serious illness. He needs to stay home to take care of his health. and then I could still get 80% of salary from my working unit, so I could stay home, do my own writing. That's how I did a lot of my writing, and that's why during the Cultural Revolution, during the Tiananmen Square demonstration, 1989, I was able to go there to participate whole event, to associate, to organize. Since I was working in the Beijing Writers Association, I was the member of that, and so I just would like to do something to support the student, to support to express our own freedom of right, freedom of expression. I was able to do this alone, not be caught right after the movement crashed down. I was now working in the working unit. I was alone. I was separate individual.
Yeah.
So they did not, from the working unit, they did not have the proof at that moment to prove I actively participated in this event. So that's why I was able to. Until 1990, I received the Hellman Hammond Award, and then at this country, my life kind of was in danger because they were collecting the evidence of how much I involved with this student democracy movement. So, and I received the Hellman Hammond Award, and Brown University at then there was a creative writing program, and Bob Coover, who is the professor, fiction writer, and to work with previous president Walter Gregorian to establish another program called Freedom to Write program inside this creative writing program to help writers from the world, such who ever have the circumstance like what I have. So that's how did I come to United States, 1990 January.
So my understanding of the Brown Freedom to Write program was that it was offering a chance for Chinese dissident writers to leave the country and come to the United States. How did they discover your poetry?
There was back then, 1989, I already had a translation of my work spread out in this country.
Okay.
That's how did they, also I had my translator who also helped me my translator passed my work to Pan America. And then at that time, Pan America already know my work, and then then contact different universities in the U.S., such like Harvard, Yale, Clemson, all the top universities. So Brown was one of that, and as I said, because Bob Coover and Gregorian would like to, establish a program to help Chinese writers. So then such a program, Freedom to Write program, born then. That we were invited. We came here, 2 poets, 1 novelist. The novelist came from Paris, and another poet was already living in New York City, and come to Brown. And I was originally in China, and invited to come to United States. And I had a really tough time to leave the country to get a visa. I had a tough time to get a passport. In China, usually back then, we did not have, nobody has a passport. They just have a living identification to prove which city you live. To leave the country, we have to first of all get a passport, secondly get a visa. For my situation like that, I would have less trouble to get a visa, but more problem to get a passport. For people who has a little bit less literary or political background, they would have more trouble to get a passport, but they will have less trouble to get a passport, but more trouble to get a visa. So spent three months to apply for passport. That's another story. Went through a very, very difficult time. They were trying to prove I participated in this Tiananmen Square, and the student movement, 1989 student movement, and but at then they did not have any evidence yet. So finally, after 3 months, 4 months, I received my passport. I get my visa within 2 weeks because the American embassy kind of already know my case.
Yeah.
They did not think I would be able to get a passport. So as soon as I get a passport, I went to the American embassy. They say, we already know your case, and so we will just issue your visa quickly. So that's how did I get my visa finally. Left China, come to this country.
You said that when you were writing poetry in China, a lot of what you communicated was sort of an outward energy, like fighting the system, fighting your childhood, fighting the constructs of society, and that was where you gained your value, so that when you came to the States and that there was nothing to fight against, you felt lost and you started to look inwards. So do you think that the development of your poetry has sort of accompanied your journey through that transition from sort of concentrating your energy on the outside to looking more into yourself? In an introspective sense? Absolutely.
The poetry is definitely closely reflect people's growing history, and because poetry was an expression of the understanding toward your life and the emotion toward you, the objects, and the relationship between yourself with outer worlds and yourself with your inner self. So in a different stage, you have a different kind of understanding and in the lifestyle, the poetry, whatever the artwork supposed to be reflected to that. So while I was in China, as you already mentioned, as I said, because we live in such a close society, so all we want to do is to see more of the outer world, freedom. And just like we live in a room, there's no door, no window, there's no lights. So all you can do, all you would do in that room was just chisel, fight with the wall, chisel, try to get a little bit of hole, get a crack to see the sunlight, to hear the birds sing, to see some kind of green color. So all the energy you are doing actually is fighting. You are fighting with something, something really close to you, something oppress you, something to make you feel not free, have all the fear surround you. So I would say for my writing style back then, while I was in China, more it's like a outgoing, lots of emotion there, lots of shouting, emotion, anger, and just want to get out, And when you come to this country, it's such a free country, and of course there's all different a lot of other things. You would not feel free to live. Let's say if you have under so much burden of the finance, you wouldn't feel free. But in general, I'm talking about in mind for thinking. It's a free country, it's free. So many options. So I just feel like those fighting energy all suddenly just vanished, disappeared, because there is no object, there's no opponent in front of you. That's why you don't have to fight with society. Society provides so much thing for individual, So then generally I start to feel like that fighting. If I still release myself to fight outside, there's nothing for me to fight. And then to understand, to grow up in a communist country, and all we have learned is just to fight, to complain, to feel, not fair about our life. And so you are not having too much of time of thinking your inner world, thinking about inside deeply, as a human being, right? And what the depth you could be reached, what kind of other kind of internal experience you could really experienced, because there was no such environment, But since I come here, I stay at Brown University. I'm well founded at that for the first few years, so give me more time to think about my life, my lifestyle, my culture, So I start to gradually toward to have the energy and the thinking and the emotion toward the inside, go deep myself, think about as a human being, the thinking, the way of thinking, the way of live, and how could I deal? So I'm putting more thing into myself inside. So my writing is also different. Because before, what in China was a lot more emotion in, but since I come to this country, writing becomes more deep, but quieter, and the energy toward the inside, and to connect. I feel like to connect with the depth of a being, of a living, is much more profounder than the way when I lived in China.
And you mentioned that poets must speak from a vantage point that is like elevated and almost disengaged from society, and that poets must speak not just from their individual psyche, but also from a sort of collective consciousness that transcends both space and time. So how does someone go about achieving this perspective, and how do you think your own experiences have enabled you to reach that sort of global, or look through that global lens?
Yeah, okay. There are many writing styles. Many writing style related to the way of a people's living. Okay, so for me, since I had a really tough childhood, then the society, then I lived in society. Society was very messy and not fair society, and some way to say it's a cruel. It's a violation to human rights, to human being, So for me, since I went through that, I'm not just thinking of my own lifestyle, and I'm not just writing poetry to cry my own miserable life or pain or loneliness or fear, and I'm more of thinking through myself as a solid being, and to understand the living world, to understand the society, to understand humanity. So that's my way of living, my way of writing. So I always feel like, deeper I understand myself, of course, deeper I would understand the humanity, and then more I could present myself, devote myself to humanity, to the society, through poetry, through articles, through criticism. So that's just my choose to the way of living. Would like to not just to crying for my own self, also crying for the injustice in our living world, and the poverty and the violence and and all those kind of things endanger or make our living world not healthy, or make people feeling painful and uncomfortable. So I would like to, through my poetry, my writing, to talk to speak to all those kind of people. It's just if there's joy, not just my own joy, it will be a joy of this living world.
Do you think in that sense poets sort of have a sense of duty to communicate what perhaps people who are suppressed, or people who don't have that voice, to communicate a global sense of emotion and injustice? And how do you think poetry achieves that in a way that prose doesn't?
The poetry and prose is two different kind of the form. But the poetry was more and there were more, it's tighter, and also there were more imagination in. You leave a lot of space for people to feel. You know, and the prose kind of things, you say everything you want to say. You tell people 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 until 10. But for poetry, the difference, the poetry, if there's 10 things, you only tell 3 or 4. You leave that 5 or 6 as empty spots, empty spaces for people to bring their own life into it, and to stimulate their own life's perception and the imagination to participate with you. So that's the difference between poetry and prose. One difference between poetry and prose. But to answer your question, I say that if people are, for me, like I live in a foreign country now, I don't have the fear of if I'm saying something or I'm writing something, I'm be honest, I'll be punished, I'll be persecuted, I will be arrested. I do not have that kind of fear. So of course I would have a more duty and obligation to tell more, to follow my own heart, to not feel fear of writing much more than people who would still live in that kind of circumstance. So also I believe since a poet or all kind of a good artist, when the way they live is not just to work with their own crafts, to make their own artwork prettier, more beautiful, more precise. That's one thing you need to do. Another thing is to really get into your own world, to understand through your own world, to understand our living world better. I believe that is the path supposed to be. So when a person is talented for the creativity, so this creativity it should not only for the very, very personal life of their own daily life, understanding of their own very subtle living way or living style, and a gifted artist, I believe, should be also, when they really follow in their own heart, that heart should feel other hearts live around. That heart should not only contain or feel its own pain or desperation or joy. It should also receive and connect with the pain of joy and all other kind of things with this humanity. So as a gifted artist should also really receive that part and follow that part and present that part through its own skill, own style of art. That's what I believe.
So
not everybody would think this way. A lot of people would think about, I just need art is pure art, And but when back to China, I was also thinking, I was writing a lot of articles about pure art, pure history, But that was from the way of studying your own writing style. But I talk about in the broader area, broader consideration, a person should, if the person is that person, be with himself, be with his or herself, to feel his own heart, and that through that heart, you should feel more thing behind or surrounded or beyond.
So you write your poetry in Chinese. And last month at the John Nicholas Brown Center on the panel with Amitav Ghosh and Hajin and David McCurdy, you mentioned that now as your English starts to improve, you started to fight with your translators about about how they translate particular words or terms in your work. What are some of the difficulties or the frustrations you faced in translating Chinese to English? As like in Chinese, each word is sort of a prism that refracts a lot of different meanings and has cultural connotations and means so much more than just the word in itself. So do you feel like that sense of like culture or like cultural understanding is lost when you translate?
I believe from one language to another, especially about the language, that each language has their own culture, has their own have own depth, and a lot of things are so particular. Only this language could really, describe what it happened. So unfortunately, poetry is not like painting and the music.
Yeah.
You do not need a translation. There's for the painting and the music or other kind of sculpture, the things it's between your eyes and your heart. There's already have a connection with it. But for the writing, you have to for people to understand, you have to translate that another language. So from one language to another language, the essence of the language itself, more or less, will be lost. Like the Chinese has their own. When you write a Chinese word, has their own picture.
Yeah.
You could see the picture. Like my name is Xue Di, and the first name means snow. Actually, Xue means snow in Chinese. So when you write snow in Chinese, you almost feel like snow is falling on the ground. And so when you translate that, of course, that part is missing. Also, language is its own pace, rhythm, the sharpness, and the history of that. So all more or less will be lost.
Yeah.
But I think as the meaning of the language presented, I don't think will be get lost too much.
Okay.
The thinking, the consideration can carry from one language to another language. But the uniqueness of that language is going to be, it's going to be missing. But if as a translator, is a good translator, they can actually build up the history of or the beauty of the language translated into it to make a great sense in this another language. Meanwhile, carry over all the meaning of the thinking of the expression as a thought in another language to this new language. I think that part could be carried over to it. So unfortunately, there's no another way to do it. This had to be the way. So as a good translator, they are able actually to catch up a lot of things, to rebuild a lot of the beauty and the meaning in the translated language.
Yeah.
So will be still achieved. That's why the translation for poetry exists for years and years. Will be never vanished. People always appreciate, like when I read Alexandria Pushkin or Baudelaire or W.B. Yeats. I deeply in love with those poems.
Yeah.
Even those poems, so I was reading those poems in Chinese. Of course, if I read in English, it would be different. It would be present a totally different kind of beauty.
Yeah.
But since the translator was so good, so I felt complete beauty in the translated language. Touched my heart, touched the generation by generation in China. So.
So I just discovered that your Xue Di is actually your pen name. So can you talk about why you chose that particular name to represent you or your poetry?
My original name is Bing Li. Okay, Li Bing. So Bing is the first name, Li is the last name, is the family name. So Bing is one of the most popular given name. Like Bing could be, in China is a Bing, but there could be many meanings of Bing. Bing could be soldier, Bing could be ice, Bing could be polite. There's many ways. So that's why, especially during the Cultural Revolution, a little red guard and a soldier, those are most popular images in China. So lots of parents give their kids name as a Bing, first name as a Bing. Li is the largest family name because China has 100 of the family names. Qian Sun Zhao Li. So Li used to be not in the top of the population, but since we had a lot of emperor back to back to the history, we had a lot of emperor whose last name is Li. They just would like to grant, when they award people who are loyal to them, They say, I'll give you my name, family name, which means, so those people would have a family name as Li, then they pass generation by generation, grow up. So that's why Li is also a very popular name, family name in China. So Bing Li is one of the most popular names in China, like this country, John Smith or Michael something, So, well, as a poet, had a very popular name was not actually a good thing. And well, I remember, when there was time and a friend of mine would knock my door. Back then, we did not have telephone.
Yeah.
Friend of mine would knock my door, say, hey, you just published one lousy, really bad poem. You even dare to publish. You wrote it, even dare to publish. So what are you talking about? So they would show me the newspaper. So yeah, it's really exciting mind and being, but it's not me. A poem was really bad. So, after several times this kind of thing happened, or well, was a walk on the street. If I heard someone called Bing Li, I would stop, turn around. I would see other 9 or 10 guys all turning around. So I decided to, give myself a unique name. Not really, nobody else would have that name.
Yeah.
That name would only represent myself. So I was born and grew up in Beijing. It's a capital city. It was such a huge population, and barely see nature. There's no trees, no green color back then, and and the environment was not even a consideration deal for during the time Cultural Revolution back then. So my my joy was, as I said, I had a really tough childhood. I really went through the really painful growth during the Cultural Revolution. So I love nature. I really love nature, but I did not have chance to see nature to live in Beijing while I was living in Beijing. So only chance for me to see nature, to feel the beauty of nature, was when to see the snow comes. So when snow comes and just the ground is covered by snow, that was just my happiest time. Feel nature, I remember I was really even went to the park and slept. I was like sliding on the snow, big hill. Open my arms, thought I feel so free. I feel I could fly. Then I fell. Then there's like a 10 stitches on my, if you take a look at this, I have a lot of those kind of accidents. So, I love snow. So I thought, I give myself, my pen name is Xuedi. It means first name is snow. So that just give me a feeling of feeling comfortable to be in the nature, to feel, that's the only time I could feel pure, feel like I'm touched. I'm not really worried about how dirty the world is, at least my living world back then. And then since snow and the D means revelation, but when you give the name, you give the 雪, you have to make Chinese has 4 tones, like ma. Okay, I'm A, so it will be ma, 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 ma. They all spell as ma, I'm A, but the 4 tone ma, 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 ma have totally different meaning. Ma could be mother. Ma could mean you get stuck with somewhere. Ma mean horse. Ma could be abuse. So you have to be careful with all the pronouns and the tones. So when again back to the pen name, when you give like 雪 is 雪 is the 3rd tone. You want to make another tone. It's going sharper. So I give D as a revelation. I like the look of the D, looks solid. 雪 looks pretty. D looks solid to get in balance. Also sounds a little bit one swollen sound, another one spoken out sound. So that's how did I make my name Xuedi. So since I came to this country, I'm really glad I have been actually so many national parks residencies. I have been invited I have been provided the residencies in different places. I always, in the summertime, always like to go to the national park. I feel like that's the place I love. To live in the nature, to write my own work. That's the best combination I could have. So I've been a lot of the Rocky Mountain National Park, and to have residency, and a lot of different places they have residencies. So that's to answer your question. That's how do I 雪迪. So now 雪迪 was actually back then was the only name, because that's no family name as 雪, no family name as a 迪. Okay, the family, there's no such 雪 as a family name. So I thought it would be really great. But now if I look at the website, type in 雪迪 in Chinese, I would see, I don't know what happened. 雪迪 is so popular. 雪迪 has the beer company, and the beer company has the underwear company, has the socks company, has a hat company. So I thought if I knew back then, if I registered my name back then, of course no such registration for the copyright or whatever. If I had, I would be really rich, But people apparently they stole my name, because that's the name. It's not. You have to. It comes from a creative mind. Also come from a lot of reason to name 雪 and the 迪 together as nature. So now I think I have a lot of book published in China. Fortunately, unfortunately, the name spread out. So some company just they took my name, registered for their business. I got nothing from it besides to see my name.
So what's your... You went back to China in 1997.
Yes.
Have you gone back since?
Yeah. I went back in 1997 was because I came to this country in 1990 until 1990. That was 7 years. Between those 7 years, I was not daring to go back to China, because I then was still the postpone of the 1989 democracy movement. So I was still afraid of to be catched, persecuted if I went back to China. So I waited until 1997. That was the first time I went back to China. I was lucky to get into China. My parents, I stayed in my father's house. My father's phone was tapped. I was followed, but I did not. But during that time, I did not really participate in the serious literary event. So I was able to come back. And since 1997, I went back to China, I would say 4 or 5 times. A couple times I went back to China. I went to Tibet. I went to different places, Hong Kong for the International Poetry Festival. The few other times I also went back just to visit my parents and travel in China. And so last time I went back to China, I would say maybe 3 years ago. Since I started this, and now I work as in the media technology services. So most of the time we are allowed to take 2 weeks. So 2 weeks is a little bit short for me to go back to China. So I'm still now every year my parents will ask me, when are you coming back? I say, I don't know, we'll see. So that's the situation.
What's your relationship to China and to your parents right now? How do you view? What are your feelings toward them?
Yeah, I still luckily I talk to my parents every week. Okay. I talk to my parents. I talk to my mom every Monday night, most likely, because I also play table. I love to play table tennis. I go to the league to play. Roland Table Tennis Club to play league every Monday, and Wednesday to practice beside my writing, beside my work, my tutoring in Chinese. So when I finish my playing, that's usually the evening. I have a little bit of time. I would talk to my mom. It's 12 hours difference, so our time is like 12, 1 o'clock. That's just time, their time, noon time or early afternoon. So I was able to communicate, talk with my mom, my father through the phone. And they're not in great health because they're kind of old. They did not have a lot of exercise. So not like this country really know how to protect themselves for their health. Anyway, so I was able to talk to them, and just the only thing was just could not really see them in face, see them in person. Could not really go back and visit them. But still, luckily, still could talk to them. Also, I have a younger sister who lives in New York. She used to do the painting and the sculpture, and now she just she to take care of her daughter. So during the Christmas time and Independence Day, I would go to New York to spend a week with her, with her family.
So what are your feelings towards China? Like, do you have sort of a hatred for the past, the history that it's gone through, or?
Whatever happened to me. That just means my life's supposed to go through. I don't hold anything back, from even my personal misery from my childhood. For the country, of course, that's forever pain. That's shame. That's crying toward the humanity. For me, if you ask my feeling toward China, for now, I have a lot of anger and the pain and feeling miserable for my country now, because the economic is going up, but for the people's living circumstances, for free thinking, it's getting worse and worse. People are oppressed and persecuted, harassed in my country, when they are just having a freedom of speech, freedom of expression. If they post some kind of article on the website and online, they could be in trouble. So things are actually almost getting worse than before, back to 1989. So it's so much crime, violation toward the humanity, toward the Chinese in that living country, not just about writing about freedom of thinking. Even people, now China is really still developing. A lot of places, the people who live there for generation after generation, now they say, okay, we need to take your place because we need to build buildings, or we need to make some kind of company in this area, or the amusement park. So those people will be forced to leave their own home. They get a very, very low payment to what they lost. Not even one of the 50%. They really could. Let's say they have to build their house. Let's say 50,000. They only get 500, 600. So this is so much. The violence to force them to move out, and so the reason I'm talking about that, it's just to tell you that it's not just about the thinking, consideration, and the freedom of living free. It's just even your own very limited living rights, even that is violated. And so to see what's happening in China, I feel heartbroken. I feel really very, very painful and angry. Only thing I can do is to communicate with a friend of mine to live in China, to write poetry article about that, and to express my feeling through art, through creativity, through poetry.
So how does ping pong fit into all this?
Back to then, my parents divorced. I was so little. I had to try so many different things to see what would save me from the misery, the miserable life. So I've tried. I imagined I could be a sailor, officer, or whatever, you can imagine. So I've tried ping pong back then, and now it's a very popular sport in China. Actually, it's the second largest sport in the world. China is the strongest country for table tennis right now. And back then, it was very popular. So my father wanted me to see if I could be an athlete. So I had 2 years of formal training, and to play table tennis every day, like 4 hours, basic stroke and competition and consider and analyzing the style, those kind of thing. So that's how did I start to play ping pong. And after to play 2 years, then I was like 11 years old. I thought I did not want to live my life. I still the feeling of the pain and all the confusion kept growing inside my body, inside of my mind. So to play table tennis did not really help that much of it. I just knew I had to do something else to really find answer of why I'm living this way, why my country is going through this. As I say, 12 years old, I find the collection of poems. So I start to really, I feel at that moment, this is the way I want to live. I want to write, I want to become a poet. But then I come to this country in 1990, after couple years stay and feel like, then I get a chance to know some friends. They also play table tennis. They say, that's a good sport. I say, I know it's a good sport. So they say, oh, you know how to play? I say, a little bit. He said, okay, I'll show my friends. There's a table tennis club. I'll show you how to play. Don't worry. I'll teach you how to do it. I said, okay. So I went to the club with my friends. I played and just, I beat them badly. So they were they had no idea. So then I thought it's a good exercise. Table tennis is a really great sport. It's just not just for the physical, for your body. You have to use your legs, your arms. You have to step around so much, left to right, in and out. Also, since it's such, it's a quick sport. It's like the ball cross the table. It's like a 120 miles per hour, but you only have a few seconds to react that speed. And then when people spin the ball, that's like a 1 minute 1,000 revolution. So you can imagine to handle with that kind of power and the stress, how much stress you have to handle it. So speed, then plus you have to be very quick, you have to be very smart with your mind to figure out the strategy. So table tennis is great, one of the best sport for. It's not violent, it's very intellectual, and it's very smart. People say that's like table tennis, just like it's like a chess. It's such intellectual style, chess in the sport way. So I like to play, and I also think for me, I've been living my life like, my own world, the writing. Of course, I go out and connect with the world, but it's all the energy toward in the world, and it's very quiet. I always, feel solitary, feel lonely. So table tennis is also kind of good for me to have a chance to be with people, to release my emotion out, to see the winning or lose right away. To write a poem, even you think it's a good poem, to really know it's good or not, it takes time. Takes a lot of criticism, people's reading. And so table tennis, you get the result right away. I kind of like that. So that's, by that reason, I play table tennis. I was doing good. I was the league champion for 10 consecutive years, 10 years of a state league champion to play. So that's why, I love to play table tennis. I was really, deeply involved with it.
Okay, last question. What's your favorite poem that you've written?
My favorite poem of my writing, they're always hard to tell that question, to answer that question, and this because different poem reveal the different kind of thinking or living. So I would say I have a poem I like a lot, which is a little bit longer. It's called Remembering, and I also have a poem I like a lot. Actually, a few days ago there was a Unspeakable Practices, number 5. I was invited to give a reading, 5 minutes reading. I actually read one of the poems called Hotel Viking. I wrote that poem, that's a short poem. I read that poem. That's one of my favorite poems. That because that poem really combined of the skill and the living circumstances in this kind of exile style, and also about what happened in my country. Thank you so much for interviewing, asking all the really tremendous, really great questions, and thank you to Tara.
Oh, absolutely. I'm Dr. Well. I've worked with 3D for so long, and like to know, no, really, it's like, I feel more honored to know you now.
Okay, that's
You're
good.
a rock star.
Oh.